Listen closely, because what you're about to hear is a story about the moment the galaxy's most advanced military academy discovered something humbling about a species they dismissed as primitives. The Valorian Institute of Strategic Warfare sits at the heart of the Kepler sector, a gleaming monument to 10,000 years of military excellence. Its halls have trained the commanders of 100 civilizations. Crystalline spires pierce the void, and within them, the greatest tactical minds in known space learn the art of starship design, fleet composition, and the cold mathematics of warfare. On this particular cycle, the assembled students, Vulthians with their calculating minds, Centauri warriors with their predatory instincts, and even a few mysterious architects whose motivations remain eternally unknowable, gathered in the grand amphitheater. Today's lecture was a formality, really, a curiosity, a chance to observe the developing species protocols in action. Their instructor was Commodore Thelkas, a Vulthian of immense renown. His carapace gleamed under the soft luminescence of the Academy's artificial suns. He gestured toward the holographic display, and there, rotating slowly in 3 dimensions, appeared a warship. "Behold," Thelkas announced, his voice resonating through the amphitheater with practiced authority. "The human Defiant class destroyer, one of their latest designs. They call it the USS Unbreaker. We are studying it today as a case study in inefficiency." A ripple of amusement moved through the crowd. "Notice the hull composition," the Commodore continued. "A relatively primitive fusion of steel and composite materials. Laughably fragile compared to our own reinforced crystalline armor. Their shield generators operate at a mere 12% efficiency compared to Valorian standards. Their weapon systems rely on," he paused, almost in disbelief, "kinetic accelerators and plasma conduits, all arranged with what we might charitably call predictable symmetry." The hologram rotated again. Students leaned back in their seats, secure in their superiority. Then, from the lower tiers, a hand rose.
"Thelkas optical sensors na romet."
Few students interrupted his lectures. Fewer still were outsiders. "Yes?" he acknowledged, with something that might have been barely concealed annoyance. The human stood. He was young, perhaps 30 cycles by their biology. His skin was remarkably fragile, his frame slight compared to the armored predators and crystalline beings surrounding him. His name was Dr. Marcus Chen, a military exchange specialist from Earth. He wore the observer's insignia, a white stripe across his uniform indicating he was here to learn, not to compete. "Commodore," Marcus said, his voice clear and steady, "I have a question about the armor distribution along the starboard ventral section, just aft of the primary fusion reactors. The plating appears deliberately thinner there." The amphitheater fell silent. Thelkas's mandibles twitched, a sign of offense among his kind. "Dr. Chen," the Commodore said with measured coolness, "that observation is irrelevant. The thinner plating is an oversight in their design. Primitive engineers making primitive mistakes." But Marcus didn't sit down. "May I approach the display?" he asked. Thelkas gestured dismissively, but Marcus was already moving. He walked to the hologram and extended his hand. The display responded to his touch, rotating to the exact angle he needed. And then, with the kind of certainty that only comes from genuine understanding, he began to speak. "What you're calling an oversight," Marcus said, "is actually a kill zone buffer." He manipulated the display, pulling up schematics. The ship's internal systems materialized in transparent layers. "Here's what your analysis missed. Yes, the armor is thinner, but look at what's behind it." The students leaned forward now, their condescension slowly transforming into something resembling genuine interest. "You see this section?" Marcus pointed. "This is a pressure bulkhead system with triple redundant fail-safes. And here, he traced a path along the interior. This entire network of channels is filled with a liquid polymer compound that our engineers developed specifically to absorb kinetic impact energy. It hardens on impact, disperses the force laterally, and prevents catastrophic armor failure." Thelkas rose from his seat. "Speculation. Their previous ships lacked such." "Their previous ships didn't need it," Marcus interrupted, then immediately added, Sir, because humans didn't have the computational power to design perfect armor. So we learned to build armor that breaks intelligently. He pulled up another schematic, a cross-section of the hull under impact simulation. When your Valorian armor is struck with sufficient force, what happens? It dissipates the kinetic energy through crystalline lattice redistribution. One of the Centauri students answered confidently. The impact force is harmlessly distributed. Exactly, Marcus nodded. Until it's not. Until the force exceeds the design threshold, and suddenly your entire shield matrix cascades into structural failure. Your whole ship goes dark. Everyone aboard is either dead or floating in vacuum. He turned the simulation on. Energy bolts struck the human ship's hull. Where the Valorian armor would have rejected it cleanly, the human design did something different. The impact was absorbed by the thinned plating, which deformed. The energy transferred to the liquid polymer, which hardened and fractured in a way that redirected the force sideways, bleeding it off into dedicated dissipation channels. The pressure bulkheads sealed. The ship shook. It was wounded, but it stayed intact. Humans can't build perfect armor, Marcus said quietly, because we don't have perfect understanding. So we build systems that survive imperfection. We build ships that lose armor and keep flying. We build weapons that work when supplies are low. We build protocols that work when everything else fails. The amphitheater was absolutely silent. Felkas's compound eyes fixed on the human with something that might have been the first genuine flicker of uncertainty. This, the Commodore began carefully, represents a single clever adaptation. Nothing more. But Marcus was ready for that. With respect, sir, it's not a single adaptation. It's a philosophy. Marcus walked back to the center of the amphitheater, addressing all of them now. Humanity developed on a world with severe resource scarcity. We couldn't afford perfection. We learned to build from salvage, to innovate under pressure, to create systems that don't just fail safely, they fail usefully. When a human warship loses a shield generator, the remaining generators don't just work normally. They're specifically designed to reconfigure on the fly, distributing power in ways that weren't in the original specs. Because we knew we'd have to improvise. He gestured to the hologram again, and this time he pulled up a different image entirely. A human vessel, older and far more battered, engaged with a Valorian destroyer in a tactical simulation. In this scenario, the human ship is smaller, less armored, and operating at 50% power due to reactor damage. By your standards, this is not a real fight. This is an execution. He ran the simulation. The human ship moved erratically at first, almost appearing damaged. But as the Valorian destroyer pressed its advantage, something became clear. The human captain wasn't flying a broken ship. She was flying like a broken ship. Every evasive maneuver, every seemingly desperate change of course, was actually a feint. The Valorian commander, expecting the human to die, kept pushing forward, following the predictable vectors of a wounded prey. Then, at the exact moment of apparent vulnerability, the human ship's engines, which everyone thought were damaged, flared to full power. The ship pivoted in a way that Valorian tactical doctrine considered impossible. The simulation ended with the Valorian destroyer taking critical damage. How is this possible? A Centauri student demanded. Their power output couldn't have regenerated that quickly. It didn't, Marcus explained. They routed power from systems that they considered less critical. They overclocked their engines beyond safe parameters. They fired weapons in a sequence that damages their own gun mounts. Every decision in that last minute would have been considered suicidal tactical doctrine by your standards. Because it is suicidal, Felkas stated flatly. Only if you're trying to survive the ideal scenario, Marcus replied. But what if you're the human captain, and you've accepted that your ship is already dead? What if the only question left is, how can I make his death more expensive than mine? He let that sit for a moment. That's when your training breaks down. That's when the rulebook becomes a luxury you can't afford. And humans have been living without that luxury for our entire existence. The Commodore stared at the human for a long moment. Then, slowly, he gestured for Marcus to continue. Show us more. And so Marcus did. He walked them through human military history, not the glorious victories, but the impossible ones. The battles where humanity had no business winning. The moments when every conventional analysis said they should have been annihilated, and yet they persisted. He showed them the asymmetrical warfare tactics, the guerrilla resistance strategies, the technology that was built from the ruins of older technology, iterating and improving not through generations of refinement, but through years of desperate innovation. "We don't think like you," Marcus said, his voice growing stronger with each example. "We don't design perfect ships for perfect battles. We design ships for every battle, because we learned very early in our history that the universe doesn't care about perfection. The universe cares about what survives." He pulled up one final image, the human USS Unbreaker rotating slowly in the holographic field. This ship was designed by engineers who had seen every way their previous designs could fail. They didn't try to prevent those failures. They incorporated them into the design itself. They made their ship stronger by accepting that it would break. And when it breaks in ways that keep it fighting. The Commodore stepped down from his platform and approached the hologram. For what felt like an eternity, he studied it. Then he turned to the assembled students. "What Dr. Chen has revealed," Thelkas said slowly, "is not a flaw in human design philosophy. It is a different design philosophy, one that we, in our ancient certainty, had dismissed as primitive." He paused. "I believe we have been wrong." The echo of those words hung in the amphitheater like a physical force. Marcus wasn't triumphant. He looked, if anything, slightly sad. "You weren't wrong to think your systems were superior," he said. "By every standard metric, they are. Your armor is better. Your shields are stronger. Your weapons are more precise. But none of that prepared you for an enemy who had already accepted defeat and asked, 'How do I make it count?'" He looked out at the rows of brilliant minds, the Volthians with their ancient computational mastery, the Centauri with their evolutionary combat instinct. "Humanity is young. We're fragile. We're improvising at almost everything we do. But we're improvising in a galaxy that's been standing still. You've had 10,000 years to perfect your designs. We've had 300 to learn from our failures. And failure, real failure, not theoretical failure, that teaches you things that perfection never can." Thelkas extended a segmented hand toward Marcus. As Marcus shook the Commodore's hand, something profound shifted in that amphitheater. The students weren't just learning about warship design anymore. They were witnessing the moment when the galaxy's certainty cracked, just a little, to let in something unexpected. It wasn't humanity being greater than the older civilizations. It was humanity being different in ways that mattered. In ways that could never be taught by studying perfection, only by surviving in its absence. In the vast library of the Valorian Institute, a new section was created that cycle. Not a record of human achievement, but a study of human adaptation. Young warriors and engineers from 1,000 worlds would eventually study the species that built strength from scarcity, courage from desperation, and innovation from failure. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. Not to be the strongest, not to be the smartest, but to be willing to break, to learn from the breaking, and to come back better because of it. Humanity had brought something to the stars that even the oldest civilizations couldn't manufacture or calculate. They had brought the only thing truly valuable in an infinite cosmos. If the story of human ingenuity moved you, if it stirred something in your heart about what makes our species extraordinary, please subscribe for more human stories from the stars. Because out there, in the darkness between worlds, humanity's greatest stories are still being written.